This is the Andre Segovia Show.
I'd like to welcome Seth Larson to the Andre Segovia Show. Seth, welcome to the program. Good to have you on. Please let the audience know who you are and what you do.
Thanks, Andres. Yeah, my name's Seth Larson. Currently, I'm the owner of Resilient Roofing, mostly in San Diego, but really all of Southern California, residential commercial roofing. Previous life, it's still active, but it doesn't need as much as my time, is a design build remodeling company for residential rebuilds and big remodels.
I hear you. And I saw that at least Resilient Roofing, you guys been around since like maybe the 60s, right?
Yeah, this company was started in 1967. My wife and I took over in 2017, I think. So 8 years now that we've been running the ship. But yeah, it's been around a long time. I mean, it was small, long ago it was this big. Now it's a
Oh,
little
I'm
bit
sure.
bigger, but we're trying
Yeah.
to grow it every day.
Yeah. And it's primarily stayed in San Diego?
Yeah, so our headquarters in Miramar, right dead center of San Diego. But
Mhm.
we'll do projects. We're only licensed in California, but we'll go pretty far east, of course, up north. We've done North LA and stuff. It's a little far for the guys,
Yeah.
but yeah, go where the work is.
Yeah, and I hear you there. As I mentioned off the air, I run a small construction company too, and sometimes I gotta house my guys in San Diego, even though they're LA based, because
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
kind of where the work has
How
been
it goes.
going.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah.
yeah, but I just find it interesting that there's a lot of, well, this tends to be the case for all of California, but it tends to be a lot of older homes. So not very many new jobs that require new roofs. So how has been the experience for you in the past 8 years? Have you seen a lot of new roofs for new housing, or has it been, like remodeling roofs of existing homes?
No, that's a great question. So I guess if I had to split it up, we have roughly three divisions. One is residential, which to your point, that's mostly re-roof. So you take off the old roof, put on the new roof.
Yeah.
Then we have the commercial division, which mostly is re-roofs, but sometimes it could be new construction. Sometimes it could be like a coating. A lot of people are getting into coatings, a little less expensive, still requires maintenance. And then the third division would be the new construction. So big apartment buildings or new home developments. But to your point, we're like out of land. There's not much left. So we don't see. I bet we do 20 of those projects a year, whereas the residential, re-roofing, we did 5 or 600 last year,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
commercial, various sizes. But that's the other piece. So kind of three separate, not equal size, but three
Of course.
separate divisions of
Yeah.
what we do.
And that's what I try to drive home the point to people. Whenever we talk about California, for my audience knows this very well. I'm a real estate broker, and in dealing in sales, I could say for about 10 years. But what's been interesting is that whenever we hear the national numbers, like, oh, the median price for a home, it's like, yeah, the one affecting the medium is California. Exclude California and get a real picture of how
Yeah,
much
yeah.
housing costs in the United States, right? Because
Same with gas prices. Take us out of it.
anything economic, if it has a number on it, just exclude
Yeah,
California, right? So
exactly.
because we just sway everything. So with the
Yeah.
number in California, just looking at the market here, LA is probably one of the most diverse, where you can get technically the cheapest to the absolute most expensive real estate in throughout the country. It's just absolutely bonkers that all that can be in LA. But at the same time, what people miss, I had an economic meeting, I think it was 2019, so right before 2020, the lockdowns and all that. But up until that point, um, every one of two homes were still being cash purchased. And this is
Dang.
exactly, that was just
Jeez.
6 years ago. So when we look at that, and it's like, dude, guys, so when people are concerned about this whole market housing bubble thingy, there's no bubble when there's no loan attached to it. People were
There's still
buying.
cash. Well, and to your point, that was for people that didn't connect the dots. That's where my mind went. That was before the Inflation Causing Act or whatever they called it, um, where they injected a ton of money into the economy. Now everybody has cash. So I had no idea that statistic. That's crazy.
And that was California. So when I tell
Jeez.
you that in 2020, all of us were kind of expecting, like, dude, what's going to happen? Because we don't know if there's going to be a collapse in real estate because people won't be
Yeah,
able to pay
exactly.
their homes. Some people were able to get their mortgage deference. I covered that on my show and I informed people about it. That was completely different from the rent freeze that for residential income property owners that were really suffering even 4 years later from in the case of LA. So with all these this and that was happening, we didn't know there's so much uncertainty. Um, to see the reaction of what happened, one statistic that people always ignored was the generation. I'm 40, so this generation that's around my age and younger that were high earners, but they were renters. They didn't have any prospects about buying, and they didn't get into the market, but they were massively influenced when they were locked in their apartments, not able to go anywhere, but they're checking social media and people have like a front yard or a backyard or both. And like, man, that looks nice.
Yeah,
Meanwhile,
yeah.
here are folks locked for 2, 3 weeks, a month, even more. And it's like, dude, I want some of that action. Some of those jumped out because they were paying a rent akin to a mortgage and they had the
Yeah.
funds to buy. So when I'm having to go show open houses and there's 20, 40 customers at the time and 20 offers all at once just to have to review, it's bonkers how that all
Absolutely.
happened. But one statistic that very few people know about this, and this is an older statistic, and but it was around the same time of that economic update, we were still turning over the same amount of units as 2010. So in 10 years, let's use a number of
Oh,
10,000
dang.
units, okay?
Yeah.
So that means if in 2010 the entire state sold 10,000 units, let's say single family homes, let's just use that as a number. Um, 10 years later, we still sold the same, but the prices
Dang.
were considerably higher. Population was
Yeah,
considered to
yeah.
be larger. That's because we weren't building. That's why I asked you about those projects, see, in the past 8 years.
Right.
And that's why we see what we see. And it's like this whole affordability issue and all that takes effect. It's like we don't have those situations where we have new homes where, like you said, in some cases we're out of land. And in some houses that are being built, they're being encroached upon wildfire dangerous areas. Um, but we haven't been building anything new. And that's one of the largest contributors, and one that we can both really speak about because we both have that background, has been the building code effects on these building prices. Like, how have you seen the prices in roofing change from just in the past 8 years that
Oh,
you've
bro.
run this company?
Yeah. It's more than doubled since then. It keeps going up. We we had a lady call. She's like, "You guys gave me a quote in 2018 or 19 or something."
Oh
And
boy.
I'm like, "Oh no." And she's like, "I'm sure it's gone up a little." I'm like, "Nope, it's gone up a lot." And it's not us, it's materials went crazy. We couldn't get any materials for a long time. Because they shut down the manufacturing plants, all this crazy
Yeah.
stuff. But no, I've been thinking about that a lot because the new popular project, well, popular for the last 5, 6 years has been the ADUs.
Yeah.
And to the city and state's credit, they have been making those easier to build, but that doesn't really solve the bigger problem. Those are onesie twosies, There's a
Hmm.
couple going on in my neighborhood. We've built a few at our sister company, but that's not a 200 unit development. There's no land left in places like this, but that's why everyone's moving out. Well, that's not the only reason people are moving out of California. But part of it is there's no room for affordable housing. Everybody talks about it, the left
Yeah.
or the right, everybody. But it's like, okay, show me where in San Diego anyway, that's where I'm at. Show me where to build it. There's no dirt left. I can't build anything. And then the only land that is left, you either have to tear down something, so that adds costs to it, or just the land cost in general is just too expensive to make it, make any sense. So yeah, that's why there's not many of those projects. But then you do those little ADUs, or junior ADUs, they call them. It has to be a
Mm.
certain size requirement. Those are cool, but they're all one-offs, so they're way more expensive. You get no volume, buying power. If you're building 500 of them, that's one thing, but you're just building one custom on-site, stick by stick. That doesn't make it affordable at all. It makes it
Yeah.
much more expensive.
And I must ask, um, without taking the fires into consideration yet, because those building projects are not off the ground yet, but how have the tariffs, have you seen any impact in your building supply costs? Like whether whoever is watching this, whenever they're watching it, the uncertainty of how long these will be drawn out or if there is a stay on it, doesn't matter. There's been an impact on supplies and building materials immediately anyway. What have you seen? Has that even been an impact on you immediately?
No, I'm glad you asked that. That's one of the things I still actually personally watch. Every month we release a new cost sheet to our sales
Oh
team.
man. Yeah.
So we track every single line item. There's probably 300 different SKUs on there for this is roofing specifically. And we've been ready, tariffs, no tariff, all this kind of stuff, like everybody, right? We're sitting on the edge of our seat. And the funny thing is, not funny, it's actually really cool, is probably 80% of the SKUs that we use in roofing are made in the USA,
Oh, that's good.
which is really cool. I never really thought of it that way until, we split all this up. So as far as tariffs, only about 20% were subject to tariffs. But as everybody knows watching this, um, very few of those materialized. And if they did, it was this much. So, if one line item rises by 10% in the scheme of a whole roof, that changes the cost by a half a percent or so. I mean, it's peanuts.
Mhm.
So it never really did. The only thing that most everything in this category was made out of the country is the steel stuff. So like nails, fasteners, hardware, some of the flashings, that kind of thing in roofing. A lot of those are made outside, and not just China. I mean, there's Mexico, Colombia makes some of the stuff surprisingly. A
Huh.
lot of the tiles come from Mexico. Um, some from China and overseas. They make the, nails and fasteners and screws and stuff. But as a whole, yeah, most of the stuff was made in the USA. So besides just sort of normal inflation, price increases. Um, well, yeah, anyway, point is I watched that like a hawk, and it hasn't this year overall since January. Total prices have come down. A little bit that
Wow.
was my effort trying to get a little more volume pricing as we grow.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
as a whole, it's gone down. Little pieces have gone up. Some have come to, that kind of thing. But as a whole, it's actually gotten cheaper this year. But back to your original question from whatever 2019 until now. Oh
Mm.
man, it's about double, I'd say.
Yeah, and it
Is
was
a good
wild.
educated guess.
Yeah, I think it was like January 2021 where lumber was just like
Oh,
doubling
dude,
every other
it was
week.
nuts. Yeah.
Every 3 weeks, I'm getting a letter from our painting vendor saying, "Hey, paint's got to go up again," and we're trying to inform our clients, and they're trying to get us to honor older quotes that hey,
Yeah.
it says at
I
the
can't.
bottom 30 days. It's
Yeah,
been a
exactly.
couple of months. It is
So
nuts. Oh,
same thing. We used to say 30. We shrunk it to 14.
yikes.
During that crazy time, we did it to 7.
Wow.
But then we buy our lumber from this supplier and they quoted it daily. So what I mean is if you said, "Hey, can
Wow.
can I get this lumber quote?" They said it expires tomorrow. It's like, "Oh,
Wow.
that's how crazy it was."
Dude, man, I really wish people can just grasp. You're coming from a perspective mostly focused on roofing, and I'm from the GC, the general contracting for those that are not
Yeah,
in
yeah.
our world. So there's a lot of moving parts, and from the beginning to the furnishing of the property once it's all set. Oh man, that's just like
That was
look.
wild.
It was really difficult to just like tell them like, look, we'll build in a cushion, and if we have to, we'll be able to issue some kind of credit depending on the size of the project. Because if they're going to be like Laguna, like okay, look, you're asking for specialized stuff here. That's going to be much more difficult to obtain, and things like that. But if it's like more cookie cutter stuff, then I know we can do volume stuff. And like, hey, we buy up, store in our warehouses, and just use it as we go. But then came the part where like, wait a minute, what do you mean you guys are out of supplies? That yeah, the
Yeah, it
the
didn't even
boats have been
have any.
sitting out on
Yeah.
the ports. They can't unload anything.
Crazy.
Like that. It
Wild.
was wild times to say the least.
I used to have hair. I used to have a full head of hair back then. No, you know what we did? It was unfortunate. With our construction company, not so much with roofing because the jobs are so quick, but
Mm.
when inflation was going wild, we had this little clause in our contract that, an attorney told me to put in whatever 15 years ago. And I'm like, that'll never happen. And it talked about if inflation goes past 2%, what
Oh
happens and all that
yeah,
stuff. And unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, you know what I'm trying to say,
yeah,
we had to use it. We had jobs that are $1 million. And if it goes up 2%, that's 20 grand. You know what I mean? And that's
yeah.
inflation. And I said anything over 2%. Well, then that makes the client think that I had like this $20,000 budget in there in case it's like, no, that's not it.
Mm,
We just, 2% is normal. But anyway, it was up to, what was it at the peak? 9% or some crazy thing. So we
yeah,
had to charge them, the difference, 7% of $1 million. But that wasn't a fun time. But that's in because our costs were going higher than that. I mean, lumber was higher than the CPI,
yeah. Consumer
the
price index.
inflation was
Yeah.
9, but lumber went up. What was it? A sheet of plywood, OSB, if I remember right, was the craziest one. it was 9, 10, 11, 12 bucks in, 2019.
Mm.
It went up at the peak. I think it was $73
Yeah.
per sheet. And we burned through sheets like crazy. We use a lot of that stuff. So that was wild. Just that alone is, whatever, 10 times, well, not 10 times, but 7 times as much. Anyway, that was wild.
Yeah, and with us needing electrical wiring, just seeing that just electric like with this bundle of
Yeah,
wiring
copper
cost me
one.
how much now? And it's just like
Exactly.
it felt like it wouldn't stop doubling every month.
Yeah.
And then we've been getting more break-ins into our trucks because people were stealing these
Jeez.
things, the supplies.
Yeah.
Like, and they were brazen. They did this in bright daylight with the vehicles
Jeez.
in the driveway of the houses we were working on. And we're talking about nice areas too. So it wasn't
Yeah.
like it was the rougher parts of the neighborhood. It's the parts where you least expected it. It's like
Jeez.
in one situation, my supervisor on one of the projects in Santa Ana literally parked he parked in the driveway. He went into the home, and he actually went to go pick up lunch for the guys. So he dropped off the lunch. By the time he went back to the truck, it's like, well, there's broken glass. These guys had just struck. Like, what, were they camping out waiting for him? Because
Yeah, wait them to leave. Jeez.
it's,
Louise.
how do they know? It's nuts. So there's that was like a couple of years ago, but man, there's a lot, and people don't understand that we had to eat that cost. It's everything
Yeah,
is
there's
stole.
no yeah.
Uh,
There's
it-
no point going to insurance for it hurts, but I mean, but you'd have to pay deductible, you'd have to, so yeah, you just eat it and keep
yeah,
moving, but
and
yeah,
and
it
right
sucks.
and right now, one of the things, this had nothing to do with the tariffs or that kind of inflation. There's a different kind of inflation called the building codes. So we wrapped the
That's a good way to
project,
say it.
and we wrapped the project fall 2024 that required a new central furnace. And same client was asking to for us in this other project that we're working on right now, that we needed to get this thing serviced. Like, you know what, hey, we call up our we normally don't have to touch these things if they look all right. So like, oh, you're asking for it, then well, we'll put in the charge for a service call. So we called the same company, like, hey guys, we need another one over here, just go check it out. They're like, hey, yeah, this was messed up. So then they send us a quote and like, hey, this is like $2,000 more for the same thing that it was just like what, 6 months ago. It's like,
Right.
yeah, we can't use that one anymore because at the turn of the year, new changes in the building code, and the new ones require
Oh
this
no.
much more thingies. That's why you're seeing the price jump on that. It's like, that's a
Jeez.
$2,000 jump on the machine. It's like,
Yeah,
wow.
exactly. Jeez. Well, that's like they're trying to make these building envelopes sealed up now. That's kind of the new thing. And with Title 24, you have to foam, not just insulation, but foam all the
Mm.
gaps and all that stuff. Well, sealing in too much air can cause mold. So then they have these dehumidifiers and those air exchange for energy efficiency, those vent fans that have
Yeah.
the air exchange and stuff, so that they're always on. But now you're wasting power and you're bringing in hot air. So now you have to cool the air just because, you know what I mean? It's like these buildings that have been around for thousands of years in other countries, they're still fine. They don't rot. They don't have mold. Our stuff, we're chasing our tails. Like we got into a spirited debate with a senior inspector not too long ago because the code says you have to ventilate an attic, right? Everybody knows that. But to get proper ventilation, you should use a ridge vent because hot air rises, and that kind of thing. But in a fire zone, which pretty much all of San Diego is, I'm sure Orange County, LA, same thing. You can't use the standard ridge vent because it's like a plastic based. You have to have a steel one. Okay, so you can't use that. So now I got to use these O'Hagan vents. If you've ever seen those, low profile, and they have this like steel wool to prevent embers.
Mm.
But they don't vent as good, as many square inches as the ridge vent. So you have to use a bunch of them. So now everybody's happy, except for structural, because my roof has a shear value, in case of an earthquake. So now I'm cutting a bunch of holes to put these vents in. So like, which one do you want? It's like, nobody's happy, right? I made this guy happy. Now he's upset. Now so you're chasing your tail. Yeah. Too many codes. There's codes on codes on codes. It seems like.
Yeah, bureaucracy. This happens a lot, and in the property management side, kind of your bread and butter of your clientele there. Here in Los Angeles, dealing with a decades-old rent stabilization ordinance There's multiple
Oh
different
yeah.
housing divisions that are involved here. So the most commonly that people know is building and safety, but building and safety only get involved when there's an active permit for a project. So whether it's a remodeling or a new project, they'll get involved. Other than that, they don't bother anybody unless code enforcement's coming by. They see something they don't like and they'll call it out.
Right.
But other than that, they don't bother you, but you don't want them bothering you. That's for sure. So, in the case of the housing development community, there's the housing department and the community development side. I think there's like two or three, and those tend to have their own inspectors too. And people think those are building inspectors. Well, technically, they are inspecting buildings. They're more like activist inspectors that are just showing
Huh.
up and just citing because to them the landlord's the bad guy here, and the tenants are the ones that are being fleeced for their funds or whatever because rent is too high. So that's the mentality that most of these arrive with. So if there's not enough income coming from these properties to be able to do the upkeep, a lot of these places will look run down, which tends to be the case. But in the properties that we manage, we always try to keep them not just looking better, but a place that I would want to live in too. Like if I wanted to live there, would I like it to look like that? No, to make sure that these things are, they're comfortable for our tenants because like the 80-20 rule, 80% of your business comes from 20% of your customers. And
Yeah,
if
exactly.
a good tenant takes care of the property, then that means less chances for vagrants to get in there and damage it, which is even more expensive. So that was our philosophy there. And sometimes these inspectors will show up. It's like, hey, you know what? You need a new deadbolt here. So citation because you didn't have the right deadbolt for the door. It's like they
Jesus.
wanted a two-way keyed deadbolt, not one manual locking and one key. Those things have been illegal for a long
That's
time.
against that's
But
against fire code. Yeah,
Ex-
exactly.
right. So now that would be a fire department thing, and depending on where you are in LA does the fire department does their own inspections, and we've had our issues with them because we did what they asked us to do, only for them to come back and say this is done wrong. You guys
Oh,
literally asked for it and signed off on it, and now you're asking us to say no. Like, make up your minds, guys. But the
that's
thing is
wild.
that when housing issued this citation against the landlord, in this case my father, it's that okay, you guys, because it says you have to get building and safety over here. So then building and safety shows up. It's like, what's wrong with it? It's like, this is
Jeez.
correct. And we got to go back to housing because these guys don't talk to each other. But it made it
Yeah.
the homeowner's problem to go over there and tell housing, you guys were wrong. And here's the building and safety telling you that you're wrong. And sometimes that could go well, it could go not so well, and it can be dragged out. So, and that's just like eh, that's a
That's
Monday, or
it
maybe a
reminds me of
Tuesday.
that
But
meme I saw online. It said something about my tax dollars and then somehow also my tax dollars.
yes,
Like
I've
both of
used
those
that meme
departments.
too.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah, but
Crazy.
it's nuts that and this is for an all-encompassing thing to give an idea of a lot of the things that influence the cost pricing and overhead that we have to deal with. One major thing that both of us have not touched on at all has been insurance and how wild that has
Yeah.
gotten. Man,
Yeah.
has it been for you that you also had your auto? I don't know if you have a fleet of vehicles, but we do, and we've had to shop around for insurance after Allstate. We've been with them for like 15, 20 years, and they say, yeah, we're not going to do this commercial policies anymore because the catalytic converter is being stolen quite often, and most
Yeah.
of our
Yeah.
fleet are
Yeah.
Fords. So
Jeez.
when we went with the new auto insurance company, they weren't doing annual policies. They said at most 6 months, and if they like us, they'll
Huh.
renew us. But it's just 6 months. That's it, and it was double that we were paying annually for Allstate.
Jeez Louise. Yeah, that was a big initiative. I think at the end of last year is when we were up for renewal and we found farmers was the best. But anyway, the point is we searched all around. That was a whole thing. I was even looking into self-insurance. We're not quite big enough for that yet, you know.
Mm,
Um, but there's a captive insurance policy. You ever heard of that?
I don't think I
Where
have.
it's like a group captive. We ended up joining one for workers' comp because workers' comp for roofing notoriously is crazy expensive. Our rates are in double digits at least for roofers. I think the highest class code is 32% or something. Um, so it's expensive. But
Yeah.
point is, we joined a group captive, and you instead of me personally myself self insuring the company, that's too big of a risk for where we're at right now.
Yeah.
we joined this group captive, and basically I think there's 30 companies all across the state of California, and we're all self-insuring each other, if that makes sense. It's
Mm,
actually pretty cool. I'm only about a year and a half into it, but I like the idea. Anyway, because of that, for workers' comp, I've looked into it for vehicle insurance. There's not as big of a, category, I guess you could say,
mm.
because there's no money in it. I mean, call it what it is. It's still nothing compared to what we pay into workers' comp.
Oh yeah.
And then I've even looked into it for general liability. But what I found is, even though we do things right and we have safety meetings and a safety coordinator, we do all this stuff right. No one likes roofers. So no, no one wants to be in a group with with a bunch of roofers. So we're still stuck paying a ton of money in general liability and vehicle. But workers' comp, even though it's a lot, we've brought in that cost, comparatively, I should say, we brought that cost down. But anyway, yeah, vehicles is the whole thing. Fuel, I mean, our fuel bill every month is wild. So anything we can do to get that down. If you have any ideas, I'll take them.
Well, just build a teleportation system to send all that building material to the top of the roof. You
Yeah,
cut all that, right? Oh man,
exactly.
it is crazy that this is the stuff that people don't see. They want to see, hey, want to see a line item bid. Yeah, we have a line item bid. It's like, yeah, but where's your profit margins and your overhead and all that? It's like, well, you want to know our overhead? Man, we spent a
Yeah,
few years working just to pay insurance from liability, workers'
yeah,
comp, automotive insurance. It's like I looked at the bills, like, dude, seriously? We're
yeah.
literally working to make ends meet to pay
Seems
insurance.
wild.
It
Yeah,
it was a wild time. A lot of the X mods in construction were just like really really high, and
yeah,
at some point, like, you know what, just so we can save on some money, let's move to state fund. Let's just make sure guys don't get hurt.
yeah,
But
exactly. Please, yeah, for everybody's sake.
yeah.
No, we we looked into that. Same thing, bouncing back and forth. We were with State Fund, then we went to I can't remember them. They were all right. And then gosh, I'll remember it and send it to you. And then we found that group captive. But I've always said, if a client, everybody asks for a breakdown, but if you truly gave them the breakdown of how much, to your point, here's how much you're paying in labor, and then 20-30% of that is insurance just on that labor, they'd be like, I'm paying how much? Hey, now we're now we're talking. We get
Right.
desensitized to it because you just pay the bill all the time. But if they really knew where every dollar was going, they'd be all fired up. They'd be grabbing pitchforks and
Yeah, and
headed to the state capitol. But
yeah, because the insurance crisis, that was like that's like a slow motion accident. It's coming. You're screaming,
yeah,
get
exactly.
out
That's a
of the
good way to say
way,
it.
get out of the way. Ah, they
That's a
crashed.
good way to say it.
It's and now we have the fires.
Oh,
It's
it's going to get worse.
yeah, it absolutely worse. And the thing is that a lot of this that all of us are paying for this thing, for the recovery that's happening over there, which is insane. But I didn't know that a lot. I found that recently, actually, that a lot of that was some kind of insurance bailout thing that was worked and negotiated with from Sacramento with PG&E back
Oh,
in
gee, I didn't hear
2019.
that.
Yeah, it's so I don't know all the details just yet. I was learning about it, and I'm like, hold on. I'm gonna do a deep dive into this because this is the thing that screwed us over, so they can keep PG&E surviving the
Huh?
$21 billion policy to keep them going. And meanwhile, the biggest
Jeez.
controversy out of PG&E was that they weren't paying the victims, but they were certainly giving themselves big bonuses,
Oh,
knowing
gee.
that they all had these issues with safety and ignoring protocols and whatever. And we're in business, and I'm not here to say all big business is bad, but there was a lot of stuff that raised red flags, literally, that people don't talk about, and now they are talking about it because of what was affected with the Palisades fire, the Eaton fire. Man, when I tell you that those flames came within just the 2 blocks of my cousin's house in in
Oh,
in,
gee.
in Altadena, man, that was wild. I spent because I cover breaking news that I feel like, inform my followers on Instagram, but on the stories, not the post, because then it just floods the
Yeah,
post.
yeah.
I like flooding the feed, but my stories, I probably had about 50 no tw 20 25,000 people on average. Overall 80,000 were tuning in my stories as I was covering the fires as they were going, because the
Man.
fires, um I love studying weather cycles. So when I saw the news coming, because I've been following this stuff since I was like a kid. I was just always fascinated by the weather. It's a phenomenon. It's like, dude, this is the power of God. It's so awesome. But then when I saw the reports that were coming in, I'm like, dude, this could be apocalyptic. And I kid you not, it was the Tuesday before the big windstorms, the first week or so of January. I was literally pacing at night in my living room, praying to God, like, have mercy,
Yeah, yeah.
like if for the sake of the righteous, please, even if it's as much for them. And then hell followed. It was crazy. So every time I saw like a spark here or there, I would look at the map on the topography of the place, and I would immediately start calling and texting anybody that I knew in that area. I would post on social media, but then I would personally get on the phone with people, like, "Hey, you're in Altadena. This spark just happened. Um,
Dang.
you guys should start planning on evacuating." It's like, "Oh no, everything's fine." 1 hour later, they were evacuating. That's how quick it
Yeah.
was.
Moves
My
quick.
my
Yeah.
my buddy was with the fire teams. That was a ground zero day one in Altadena, and he sent me a video when they were surrounded by the flames and they thought they were goners. I'm like,
Jeez.
dude. And when you're clocking wind speeds at the summit of 206 miles per hour,
Yeah, you can't
I can't
fight
even.
that.
How do you
It's
calculate
wild.
such a thing?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I can't even think of a hurricane that's ever made landfall with anything like maybe 140 or 150.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
206 blowing fires? Anybody that wants an idea of how quickly a fire can move over all this vegetation that's dried out should watch Only the Brave. You'll need a tissue box. It really happened. The Yarnell fire in Arizona,
Oh,
big
it's where it
tragedy.
trapped the crew. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
man.
I remember that.
Yeah,
Wild.
the movie is pretty it's pretty powerful. They did a good job with that. And if you know the ending, then you already know that you know
Yeah,
what you're
yeah.
getting into. But I
Yeah,
think the
exactly.
people should know because they very visual. I'm like, dude, that doesn't look like CGI fire, man. That looks
Right.
legit. But it gives you an idea how quickly these blazes could turn with the wind. And in this case, these winds were just apocalyptic, quite literally.
Yeah, you can't
So
you
so
can't.
now you have 15,000 structures gone. And we were talking about this, and even Gavin Newsom was signing executive orders to try to expedite the approval process for
Yeah.
new buildings. I can tell you that I know of properties that are just burnt down to the foundations. That maybe the land value was half of what was being purchased for, and I already knew that big equity firms are going to buy them, hedge funds and all that, because of course they are. They got the money for it. But how many permits have been approved for construction
Dude,
since January? You were never just talking about it. Was it like 7?
7. Wild. Yeah, and at
Like,
this pace, maybe it's 8, it's still horrible. That's the thing is that they're trying to make what I was laughing about because I heard about that legislation, and I'm laughing that they're making more rules to make it faster. It's like you gotta eliminate you gotta delete stuff. You can't just add more things for people to read and do. You gotta get rid of whole departments and
exactly.
make actual, real emergency moves and orders. And yeah, it's gonna take forever. Unfortunately, our boots on the ground up there, working on estimates, trying to get people, we're ready to go. We're trying to push and go fast. And the clients are pushing, the insurance is full steam ahead, but there's just zero movement from the city. So there's everybody's hands are tied. Well, anyway, um, when we're going up there checking things out, taking measurements and inspecting the sites and stuff, there's a bunch of for sale signs up on the homes that didn't burn. And at first I was scratching my head like, were they already for sale? Did they, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized that these people just they don't want to deal with there's just construction trucks going up and down, doing all the tear
Yeah,
out. They're going to be dealing with who knows 4 or 5 years worth of construction in their neighborhood. It's
that's
like
true.
they're on the edge of probably like your cousin's house, right? He's only a little bit away from all the action. He's going to get sick of people going back and forth and looky-loos and all the noise and dust. And so they're just like, my guy said every other house in this one particular block, which is like right on the main drag to get in and out of, I think it's Palisades, they're all just for sale. Everyone's like, I'm out of here. And that nothing happened to their house. And they're just, probably got to take a loss just to get out of there.
You
Anyway,
are.
the whole thing's a mess.
That's one factor I didn't even think about. That is
Me
so
either till I
so
saw, yeah.
true. Yeah,
Yeah.
and construction hasn't even started yet, and they're fed up.
And they're just like, I'm out. Yeah, before it gets bad, you
You know,
know.
I'm actually really curious because I told you I'm a real estate broker, and my audience knows this, but I might do a survey and start calling up some of these listings just to find out from the agents, like, hey, is it because what's the reason for leaving and things like
That's
that.
not a bad idea.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I am curious because I remember my brother was with uh, oh my goodness, what's the proper terminology for it? It's a construction management company, but it was really for larger firms dealing with infrastructure or dealing with large scale projects. Like for example, the biggest project he handled was SoFi Stadium for the
Oh,
football
gee.
team. Yeah, yeah. So
Big time.
he loved being able to be there to break ground. You know, it's like to be there and just to see it all witnessed. So he has a very emotional connection to that stadium. So him and his kids
Yeah.
they go over there. I'm sure they have a place reserved for them every time tailgating and all that. But they did ask me if I would give them a hand, like subcontracting out some of the projects for North Orange County, because this was the time. There's railways. For anybody that knows, for example, Anaheim, there's a lot of commercial here, so there's a lot of older train tracks that run through older neighborhoods. But it always holds back traffic as the population has gotten bigger around here. So one of the ideas was to trench underneath the train tracks and
Huh.
just have the traffic go underneath on the major streets. And that project took years. But before all that got off the ground, what they needed to do sound surveys to
Oh, gee.
like and just go around and survey each property and let and inform the people that hey, all this noise is coming, you know,
Yeah.
and some of them to like either help soundproof their properties, like if they have old aluminum windows, to give them the double-sided windows, like a
Oh,
vinyl
gee.
and all that. And if that didn't work out, some of those people were going to sell because like this was going to be a multiple year project. And that all came back to me as soon as you mentioned that, like, dude, that would make so much sense. Not to mention
Oh,
that
it
some
would.
people may not like having to see the National Guard sitting there because
Yeah, all that stuff.
it doesn't. That's not the views that they paid for.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if those are all multi-million dollar things, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and just and probably the riffraff. I mean, that's the whole reason National Guard's there is looters and stuff, even though the place burnt down. But yeah, to your point, if there's a home right next to it, then people just move away, then someone's gonna ransack their house. So yeah,
Yeah.
the whole thing's it's such a bummer that there was talk of a big developer from Texas and another one from Phoenix coming out, and they were gonna like, hey, sign up. If your home burned down, we'll put you in. We're gonna make it like a development with obviously lots scattered everywhere,
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I thought that was a great idea because they got more manpower than we do. We're gonna build probably 10 of them
Mhm.
is kind of our capacity, but or rebuild, I should say, 10 of them. But if there was a company that could come and build 1,000 or 2,000, I mean, how cool would that be? Everybody can have their own custom finishes and stuff, and but I thought that was a cool idea, and I guess it kind of petered out because they realized just the logistic nightmare. They're used to building in Texas.
Yeah.
You, you and I'm patting you on the back, Texas, but you bring a napkin in with a drawing and you get a permit. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I'm jealous of that. It's not that easy, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And they come here. Oh man, you can't sneeze without a permit. So
Yeah.
they're probably just like, yeah, I'm out of here.
Yeah, and that was
It's unfortunate.
one of my main concerns with the rebuilding of LA. I reported this early on in my show. We're like, okay, so we're gonna if we see the flames come through, there was an initiative called LA Smart Build 2028, and it was in preparation for the Olympics. So this was passed
Oh,
like
that's
maybe
right.
5 years
Yeah,
ago, and their
yeah,
intent
yeah.
was to make things as smart as possible. Like, hey, I'm all into tech. People know my show. I talk about tech, both the good and the bad side of it. It's a double-edged sword. But when they're trying to modernize a very historical place. I mean, I studied at Fullerton College, and I remember going through those very old buildings and seeing all the steel conduits running on the outside because they weren't going to chisel into the concrete or the motor or whatever it was
Oh, right.
to throw in the electrical. It was all outside, and they've tried to hide it by painting it and trying to make it like it's a kind of decoration. It's like I know what's in there. So
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff, you cannot technically retrofit old buildings. So
Yeah.
now with a lot of these structures gone, where it's like, hey, you know what? Now we can actually do what we wanted to do, which is the goal is, if anybody knows about smart cities, more like a dense population living, and they call it a 15-minute city. The idea that you can walk to everything you need to within 15 minutes, you don't need to
Yeah.
drive or anything
Super
like
cool.
that.
Yep.
The idea is to reduce vehicles on the road and things like that. So I can't see that happening in the areas where it's been burned, especially with people that have the funds to rebuild what they used to have. But in the case of Altadena, it's going to be a very interesting thing because a lot of it was a more elder community. Retirees, NASA engineers were among a lot of them. It's just, well, I don't know. I don't know how you can try to make it smart, as they say, but I can't see that happening, especially with older neighborhoods being in the mix, and in some cases, historical departments being involved, and they have their own influence over what you can and cannot
Yeah.
do, like
Yeah.
an HOA.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of logistics that are just like, it's wacky. But my concern was that LA's mayor Karen Bass, who should resign by the way, ended up hiring an outside firm, I think from Iowa or Illinois, to basically be in charge of, or at least consult on the rebuilding of LA with DEI standards.
Oh no,
And when I
I
hear
didn't hear
that,
about
I'm
that.
like, oh, so I'm not gonna like anything that's coming out.
Yeah. I
So
didn't even hear about that one.
so yeah, this was I kind of expected that, but I didn't expect that we're gonna hire a firm that had some controversial backgrounds for anybody that's politically involved. So not to
Jeez.
get too into the weeds on that one, but when you hear these things thrown around, it's like, okay, so we're gonna have a very slow progression on this front, and we're seeing it. We're seeing it. Are these going to be approved based on DEI influences? Because then
Jeez.
we're neglecting entirely the people that have nothing right now. That
Yeah.
it's our
Well, they're prioritizing something that doesn't even matter. Prioritize rebuild. Like one example is the linemen are up there from PG&E, and even SDG&E sent some linemen up there to put the power lines back up. And they're not doing anything wrong, right? They're just following orders. But it's like, you guys, you could have spent 2 days in a big meeting room, and said, all right, we're going to either put the power lines back the way they were, which didn't help with the fires, by the way, or let's put them underground. That's going to be a bunch of work. But hey, this whole neighborhood's burnt down. Let's take advantage of, that's the wrong way to say it, but let's take advantage of this situation
Mhm.
and let's put them underground. And they didn't. They just went to the same, you know what I mean? So all these linemen are putting these wires back up like, aren't we supposed to go underground? Because no one just took the time. Everyone's running like a chicken with their head cut off
Yeah.
from the city and from, what I mean, building department planning and all that. It's like, just take a minute, think about it and go, all right, this is unfortunate and we have an opportunity. So let's, like you're saying, a 15-minute, let's replan this whole thing. But nope, they didn't. Now, how many months later, and still haven't done anything.
Yeah.
So it's like
And
you're in the same place anyway. It's
yeah,
wild.
and as we record this, it's been 5 months
Jesus.
since these fires. Um, is that even right to say? It could be 6 months now.
Yeah, yeah,
The time
yeah.
is a blur right now. I can tell you
Right.
this much. But before I keep going, we just crossed the 1 o'clock mark. Are you still good?
Dang, man, we're keep on going. Yep, I'm good.
Okay. Well,
We got lots to talk about.
well, and with all this time that's gone by, an estimated 15,000 structures burned with the combination of all these fires. The biggest one, of course, being the Palisades. The second one was Eon. I believe the third one was the Hughes fire, but thank God it
Oh, that's
didn't
right.
burn structures because there was fresh water easily accessible that was able to, and strategic drops to drive the fire the other direction away from neighborhoods, because I saw that in slow motion. Just as I was mentioning, I was covering this, so I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my goodness, just watching those flames creeping up on those houses and people desperately. I had friends that were driving on the freeway sending me videos as live feed, so to speak, as I was reporting.
Jeez.
So I was able to project that, like, look, that's how bad it is on the freeway. People are just jumping the median, ignoring CHP, trying to get to their homes to get something out of it. And thank God
Yeah.
not one home was damaged in that one. I was
That's
like, dude, that's a
wild. Yeah.
miracle. But
Burned a
And
lot
then,
of acres though, right?
oh yeah,
Just no structures.
a
Yeah,
lot
yeah.
of acres, but the fire, credit to them, man. Those first responders were able to push that fire the other direction by
Oh, yeah.
strategically dropping to protect the neighborhoods. The Border Two fire, I believe, was the fourth largest, and I think the Kenneth fire was the fifth, or they could be swapped. But the point is, those are the five biggest fires. In totality, we're talking about 15,000 structures burned. An estimate, I think, on average of 25 or at most 29 people killed because of the
Yeah.
fires. A lot of them
Oh,
were
yeah.
elderly, unfortunately. But let's rewind the clocks back about 7 years. The campfire started by a PG&E power line. One fire alone burned more than all these fires combined. Burned 12,000 structures and killed over 80 people. The most destructive fire we ever had, and none of that's been rebuilt yet. So,
Jeez.
if we're
Yeah.
gonna count 7 years and nothing really being reconstructed since then, and not to mention that 2 years afterwards was the campfire that was where this individual pushed a burning car into a ravine and sparked the fire in Butte County, same county that was just burned 2 years prior in the oh my goodness, what was the fire called? Uh,
Too many
I even just
fires.
said it. Just too many fires to count, but they're massive. The park fire, there we go. The campfire was PG&E. The park fire was the one where the car was
Yeah,
pushing
yeah.
the ravine.
Yep.
So but same county, Butte County. And it was nuts. I think the park fire burned like 500,000 acres. It was burning for like 3 or 4 months.
Crazy. Yeah.
It's nuts that a lot of it could have been prevented. Maintain the lines, forest management being a big one, but all of these things that we've been talking about that's been inflating the cost of building material, that influence housing costs, that influence rental costs and all that, that
It's
has
all
all been
connected.
because of green initiatives. Green
Yeah.
initiatives are the same things that prevent forest management for XYZ reasons, and also for why we have these massive fires. So, like you said earlier, removing some of that bureaucracy, yeah, I'm in favor of a heck of a lot to be removed because a lot of this bureaucracy is what led to all these tragedies and expensive cost of living in this state. It's I tell people ask me, when are you leaving California? I'm not. If you live here,
No,
you would know. It's like this place
no,
is worth fighting for. It's beautiful.
yeah, we've talked about it a lot. We got too many roots. It'd be easy to up and move, and we got a lot of friends, family, they've done all that, but we got too many roots. Our business here, our families here, all that kind of stuff. Even though I disagree with most everything that's going on, we still work within it. Because the other thing too is like I've talked to probably 5, roofing specific companies over the last couple years that have multiple locations in other states.
Mm.
And they're calling me saying, "Hey, how is it working in California? What do I have to do? What do I have to?" And I'm an open book and I don't look at it as competition. They wouldn't come to San Diego, but still, let's just say they were gonna. So I just tell them, "Here's how it works. Here's what insurance is. Here's our average cost. Here's our da 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 da, everything down the line." And I don't round it up or round it down. I just give them all the real answers. And every single one's like, "Nope, no thanks." So so that tells you how bad it is, right? We're just kind of used to it because we're in it.
Yeah.
But the point is, knowing how difficult it is to start a business, well, might as well just stay here and embrace. You know what I mean? Here's what we have. So that's my differentiator. You know what I mean? We're staying. We're pushing it through. So as many regulations as they throw at us, like you said, it's only going to affect the cost. Client unfortunately pays for that if we price it right. You
Yeah.
got to price it right, and then you just keep on going. So the clients are really, like I was saying earlier, they're the ones that should have the pitchforks,
That's
saying,
true.
"What the heck?" It's easy to take the anger out on us, but it's not me. It's everything. It's the codes, it's the inflation, it's the regulations, it's the insurance, it's everything. It's all tied together, and all it does is bring the bottom line up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what we need more of, informing our clientele. Because just like our vendors inform us, I try to inform our clients too. Because the last thing I want is for them to see a surprise quote. Like, why is this quote more expensive than the quote you just gave me recently when the work is pretty much very similar? I'm like, well, I don't want them to have that sticker shock. It's like, hey, just letting you know, the next quote's not going to be the same as this one because of these factors that are influencing the cost and pricing in California,
Right,
XYZ
right.
reasons. And I think that's exactly what we need more of, because then people can understand better how it all trickles down, how it affects even like the renters. Like, hey, I don't own a home, so I don't have to worry about that. Well, you do, because the homeowner will have to make those repairs and pay for those fees, and they need to recover the cost from somewhere, and that is from the renter.
Exactly.
The higher insurance costs. In the case of how crazy the insurance situation has been, HOAs have not been able to renew or get coverage from insurance carriers. The strategy has been to break up into like different districts, their own
Oh, geez.
communities, so they can get
I
different
haven't seen
policies
that.
for each of them. That's been
Dang.
crazy. Like, and just to give people, 'cause I've talked about it with people, but I haven't mentioned it with you. People that don't understand the extent of this, that they'll see this and see this is what happened with California and how left wing policies. No, the biggest example of the right wing people can say that, oh, model state is Florida. They might have a worse insurance crisis than we do, and
Oh,
that one's
yeah.
not as talked as often. I had a buddy of mine. He unfortunately his family's his in-laws lost everything in that park fire I was talking about in North California.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, he's in construction, but he was out there in Arkansas. After one of the big hurricanes hit in Florida, he just felt compelled, and he was attracted to Florida too. So like, you know what, I want to take advantage and get licensed to do work in Florida. There'll be plenty of work to do, because to reconstruct or rebuild or whatever they got to do to repair. And he went over there. The next thing I found out a few months later, and he's like, "What are you doing in Ohio?" He's like, "I couldn't make it in Florida. The insurance drove me
Shoot.
out of there." Like, whoa, man. So this is not an isolated incident. We're just dealing it to a different degree,
Right.
and it's these extremes are crazy, but what the more people understand what factors in, the more they realize, look, if we can remove bureaucracy from a lot of what we're able to do, not to say that there's no government involved, no oversight, that's what we need. We need oversight. That was the whole point. But when we're being dictated to, for example, rent controls, that you're going to charge this much rent. Why? Because we want to reduce the homelessness population. Okay, LA has had an RSO for decades, and it's the homeless capital of the nation with the highest rents in the nation. So this isn't working. We
It
don't need
doesn't work. Yeah.
more of
Yeah.
it. So when we take those into account, we realize we got to remove a lot of this bureaucracy, so then we can make the standard of living better. And as the economy gets better, the factors are that crime rates drop too. Desperation drops because more people get to keep stuff in their pocket, and we'll be able to hire more. Like, I hate to have to make the decision. Like, I'm sure the fast food companies had to. Why are you going to a kiosk instead of talking to a person? I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
exactly.
it's expensive. And if you go to the Habit and you want to speak to the person instead of the kiosk, look at your receipt, folks. You talk to the person, there's a surcharge because the person helped you. You
For
avoid the
real.
surcharge and you go to the kiosk. That's a
That's
tip for
wild.
all of you.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
My son and I just drove through Carl's Jr., I think, the other day, and it was
Mhm.
AI. It says, "Hi, I'm an AI. I'm taking your order. I'm trying to get better. I'm not perfect." I'm like, "Oh, they're even replacing people." So yeah, it
Oh,
is what it is.
there's a local Carl's Jr. Her name is Tori, by the way, the AI.
Oh, you
but
talked to
but they launched this years ago, and
Oh, funny.
so when they were experimenting with that, hey, I thought that was pretty good. Well, guess
Yeah.
what? Not even a year later, they stopped using it. So the orders weren't always accurate, and I guess there were too many errors that they just resorted back to the attendee helping the individual. So like, hey, what happened to
Jeez.
Tori? I got used to hearing her voice in the mornings. I try to order my breakfast burger and she's not responding. But
Well, it's funny, we're actually launching, we haven't done it yet, we're about a month away, but it's an AI answering service. So it's 24 hours a day because
mm,
we have 3 full-time people that answer our phones. And that's during the work hours, and they do outbound and inbound and stuff. But after hours, we still get some. So we've tried doing like an offset schedule and all this stuff, and it's just painful.
yeah.
So this AI answers amazing. I mean, I can share that we have a demo number. I can
Mm,
share that with you off air. You can have a full conversation with her. You and I, because of our age, we might kind of pick up a little bit that she's AI, but I'd say 90% of the people that are calling, us to come help them, they're not gonna pick it up. It's just conversational. She's instant replies. You hear background typing, like she's typing on a key. Dude, it's wild. It's the craziest thing, the world we're living in. But
uh,
back to that point, like, all right, we're over here in the private sector with all this, great technology and moving things forward. and they can't even, eliminate some bureaucracy. I heard the other day bureaucracy is the result of poor leadership or poor management, meaning, if someone makes a mistake, you make a rule so that that mistake can't happen again. Then someone else finds a loophole, you close that loophole with more regulations and rules and all this stuff. So it's just like management by fire, right? You just put out the fire by making all these rules. So then you get bureaucracy. But I think it was after some natural disaster. Maybe it was Florida, like you were talking about. I can't remember where, but anyway, what they did was, and as a GC, you could respect this idea. It's scary, but that's kind of the whole point. Is they needed to rebuild all these houses, so they let the GCs or architects self-certify the plans
Interesting.
and self-certify the inspections.
Hmm.
So it puts all the responsibility on the guys actually building it. So that sounds good. And you could see how like a bad actor would go, oh, sweet. Yeah, just sign whatever. But the big but is you as the GC are personally liable.
Liable.
Yeah. So it's not like, California litigious, right? We want to sue this guy and sue that guy.
Yeah.
You're, and that's it. It's the end of story. You're personally liable. So if you sign up, let's say if you're like, yeah, I'll rebuild some houses and you sign your name on it, 5 years later, one of them starts falling apart. That's on you. It's not on the city. There's no building department. There's no inspector. There's no, you know what I mean? There's
Hmm.
permits, but you get them instantly. And anyway, that's an idea for LA. Obviously, I haven't heard them kicking it around, but that would be amazing. I would do it, but I would also, so, all right, let's just say we got some houses and they said, yep, you can self-certify. I would self-certify, but you better believe I would be a lot more hands-on than right now. I'm planning on not personally being hands-on, but
Yeah.
if I'm signing my life away, yeah, you better believe I'm going to make sure everybody's doing the right job and,
Yeah.
following all the rules. But anyhow, that's a wild idea that I'm really surprised hasn't been kicked around up there. Well, I guess I'm not surprised. They
No,
couldn't
but
do something like that.
that is interesting.
Cool
Yeah,
idea though, huh?
yeah. Well, it's true for those that are responsible. Would definitely get behind that, and of course, some bad
Yeah.
actors will try to take advantage of that. And hey, if they get caught red-handed, they get caught red-handed. That's for sure.
Yeah, then
But
make an example out of them.
yeah, it's like there was a project in the city of Fullerton, that's in North California, and this property has not moved in so long, and we go to inspect this property, and it looks like it was halfway through remodeling on the inside. So like, oh, was there another company working on this? Like, oh, that was years ago or whatever. And so they were asking us, would you quote to finish the work? It's like, well, yeah, but are there permits open? Because we'll see if we can get the
Yeah,
permits
that's tough.
transferred
Yeah.
and things like that. So at the end, we negotiated with the city, and they told us like, yeah, you guys can take over the permits. You guys can definitely do that. Um, and you guys are assuming liability, of course. Like, yeah, about that. We
Yeah.
didn't do any of that. So it's like
Moving
you're asking.
forward liability, but not the past
It's
liability.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, we didn't touch any of that. Yeah, but you want to take over the permits, and that's the only way. So we said
Jeez.
no.
Yeah.
And then when they asked us, like, but what if you did? Well, if we did, this is how we would do it. We would assume the liability for the permits, and then we would redo all of the work because
We'd
we
have to.
don't know what
Yeah.
the heck they did. So you're gonna
Jeez.
pay for that, and if that's the way you want to go, that's the only way we'll take the job. So
Yeah, yeah.
we didn't get the job.
Yeah, of course. They'll find some clown that'll do it, you know? Jeez.
Yeah, and that is the problem. As a property manager, sometimes I get shade a lot from even other people in the industry because they're, well, we know your type. We dealt with a lot of you guys. You haven't dealt with me, but you're
Yeah.
blanking it us all. I've dealt with bad GCs. I've dealt with bad electricians and bad plumbers. I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
judge you all the same, but as a property manager, like, oh, I'm the bad guy. Like whatever, man. You probably need to find a different line of work if all you run into is bad people. But
Yeah,
uh,
exactly. Now
yeah.
we like our differentiator is layers and layers and layers. Pick one facet. Insurance, for instance, like we were just talking about. Obviously, you do it the right way because you're talking about it, right? We do
Yeah.
it the right way because we're talking about it. There are so many companies, roofers specifically, that just either don't pay for insurance or they pay for like the basic policy, but don't put their guys on it, or they hire temp agency. There's a bunch of ways to skirt the thing, right? Well, there's a customer for everybody. The customer that would go for a company like that, it's not a good fit for me. And I'm totally okay with it. You know what I'm saying? We're
Mhm.
not trying to be everybody's roofer. I want to do great work. for a certain number of clients. And
Yeah.
I think that's the same with you. You're like, hey, here's the way we do it. If you like it, great, we can talk. We're on the right page. If you don't, totally cool. I
Yeah.
understand. That's fine.
Yeah. You don't want to bite off more than you can chew. And
Yeah, exactly.
that's how it goes for us too. And I think that really comes from the a responsible and even in some extent the small business mindset of those that know their limits and know just how much love and care goes into this these businesses. And people that don't understand small business, it's like if you ever had to take care of your own child, it's an infant baby that never grows up. It needs your
Yeah, yeah.
constant attention. And people
Never
think like,
grows up.
oh, you're
Yeah.
your own boss, you can do whatever you want. It's like, man, I haven't taken a real vacation in years. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I wish I could just say, I'm leaving, man. That doesn't
Well,
work
that's what
like
I
that.
always say. Best part about working for yourself is I only have to work half days. And the better part is I get to pick which 12 hours a day that is.
Yeah, and that's just it. That I wish people people could definitely understand that more.
Yeah.
And this is the first time you and I connect, but we're obviously
Got a lot in common, man. No,
a lot.
similar paths and all that stuff. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah, and we want the better for this state. That's for sure. That's why we're still here. That's why no matter what Sacramento's throwing at us, it's like, all right, fine, we'll dish it out, because we believe in the state. We love the state, the people that are here. We service our clients because there's good people here, and we take pride in our work. That's why they
Yep.
keep coming
That's
back
it.
to us. Otherwise, we would be out of business.
That's how the capitalistic market works, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, so it's just to bring this home here. Resilient Roofing, you guys are out there in San Diego. Go ahead, pitch your company to the people that have been hearing you.
Oh, no, I mean, basically, I'd say if someone was listening to this and they're on the same page, then we'd be a good fit. And like we just said, if you're not, then then we wouldn't be a good fit. But we're Southern California. LA is kind of in our territory. North LA is getting a little too far, just
Yeah.
logistically. But uh, commercial and residential. Usually, our first step, we never just assume what a project or a property needs. We always go look at it. There's a ton of these companies now that they'll just do everything from a satellite. And there's
Mm,
benefits to that. We use that as a tool, but they don't even go out there. Let's say if you called, 5 companies, 3 or 4 of them would just do it on the phone and just send you a quote, which is cool, right? We were just talking about modern and technology and AI and all that stuff. That's all cool. But the big but is when you sign up with one of them, then they get out there, they're tearing your roof off, and then they go, "Ooh, hey, we got bad news. We found an extra layer. We found a bunch of wood damage. We found all these things that you can't see without going to climb on the roof." You know what I mean?
exactly.
So we eliminate as many as we can. We eliminate all the potential pop-ups that could be eliminated by actually physically climbing on the roof and peeling up the shingles and seeing how many layers and lifting up some tiles and seeing what's under there. Anyway, point is we some things we do very, very new school, some things we do very, very old school, and it's a perfect mix for us. So that's my sales pitch.
Yeah, and that's how it absolutely should be. I'm big on tech, but I wholeheartedly believe in good old fashioned, just
Yeah.
customer service. The
Yeah, elbow
human element
grease.
to all
Yeah,
this. Yes, yes.
exactly.
I was just thinking about this just now. About there's some people that want to order from some company and they don't realize it's a drop ship. So it's like the standard warehouse that's
Oh,
that's feeding
yep.
it to third parties, and they all basically shop from the same place. That's why it
Yeah.
looks the same. But it does happen sometimes when people do Google searches and they're calling up these companies that they think it's a company. And I noticed that this happens when I was shopping originally for HVAC companies some time ago, and I noticed that every time I refresh the page, the phone number is changing. It's like, why do you have different phone
Huh.
numbers? That's an odd thing. And then realizing that it's more of a call center, and they kind of coordinate with whoever, like
Huh.
another different company. So it's like, wait, so is this a number to this company, or is it like to a virtual office where they're like, okay, what company are they calling? This one, okay, so and so from this company, and then the next person calls like, which company? Oh, that line. So like, oh, so and so from another company. It's like, no, that's not how it
Jeez
should be.
Louise.
But it is
That's weird.
difficult. It happens a lot. I've seen that for some reason. I seen that a lot in San Diego companies. That's
Huh.
why when like Resilient Roofing, and I looked into it, it's like, okay, good. Their phone number is static, so it's not changing every
That's
time.
funny. I would have never thought to check for that. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's weird,
That's funny.
man. So I did catch on to that, and I'm as a general contractor, folks. I had to catch on to that, but for the normal consumer, might not even know about that. So
Yeah,
just
yeah.
then you all know. So this has been a pleasure, Seth, and. Who knows, man? Maybe the next time we connect, because I'd love to have you on the show again to talk California stuff and construction. Hopefully
Yeah,
things get
likewise.
better. But by then, who knows? Maybe there'll
Fingers
be
crossed.
11 permits approved in
Yeah, yeah.
LA.
Jeez Louise, I know, right? If we meet up in a couple months, we should be on track for 11 or 12.
And it's resilientroofing.com, right? That's where people can check out your
Yes,
stuff
sir.
and services.
Yep. No,
All right.
thank you. Pleasure's been all mine. It's been awesome.
All right. Well, I do appreciate it, Seth. And that's what we'll leave it for everybody watching and listening. You know the drill. All the links available that we talk about will be available at the show notes of this episode at theandresegovia.com. Seth, it's been a pleasure. Don't hang up yet, but we're hanging up for the audience. And we'll definitely talk again for sure.